Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Makeover Your Mom Life podcast. My name is Rachel Jenks, and today we are going to talk about falling in love with your husband again. So, I work with a lot of clients, and one of the things that they tell me repeatedly are things like, I just don't love him anymore. Everything he does bugs me. We don't talk to each other. We feel like roommates. We are always arguing with each other, all of these really negative things. And there's a lot of all or nothing thinking associated with it. So if you think back to the words I just said, I just don't love him anymore. Everything he does bugs me, the word everything. We never do anything together. We are always fighting. So these words that we use that are very all or none thinking. I think back to helping my daughter with her grammar, and we talk about those different kind of adjectives quite a bit. And those adjectives help paint a picture. And for us, it's a picture that's real, like it's fact, like we're spouting off the weather. So the weather, for example, let's say that it's 80 degrees today. The fact about the weather is it's 80 degrees. We can see it on the weather map. But we tend to say things like we never get along or we're always fighting or everything he does bugs me. We use those same kind of words in that same situation like it's a fact. And it's not, because the words always, never, even the words sometimes, or the words, those adjectives are describing, those are painting a picture for us. And that picture is created by our thoughts. It's how we think about things. So if we even argue with our spouse once a week about money, we might describe it to someone else as we always argue about money. And that word always is, like I mentioned earlier, painting that picture of a reality that's not fact. It's not something that can be proven in a court of law. It's not the weather. It's not a true story. So, when it comes to falling in love with your spouse again, I like to use this three-part process when I want to change how I think about pretty much anything. And so, in this particular example, we're going to be talking about falling in love with your spouse again. So, the first thing you need to do is you need to notice. Notice when you are using that all or nothing thinking, when you're using the words like always, never, like you're stating it like it's the weather when it's not. It's not a fact. So, just notice it. And that's something that you might actually do for a few days, for a few weeks, and just get really comfortable noticing when that's coming up for you. Now, you'll probably also notice when your spouse is using those same kind of words, but please, please, please resist telling him that he's doing that. So when he uses the word, we always fight about this, or you never talk to me while you're working on your computer, please don't go back to him and say, you use the word never. Don't use that word. That's not a fact, right? Just notice. Notice the conversations that you have that includes those words. And then step two is ask yourself, is this really true? Do you always fight about money? Does he never say I love you when he first wakes up in the morning? Does he always leave a mess in the kitchen? My guess is that it's probably not true. But our brains like to generalize, like to categorize, and they want us to believe that certain things are true when they really are not. So just question. All right. So, first thing you're doing is you're noticing. Second thing you're doing is you're just going to start questioning some of those things that your brain's telling you are always, never, or these all or nothing thinking type sentences. And then the third thing you're going to do is you are going to create a list. And you're going to create this list every day. And I'd like you to take a notebook. And it's really fun to have one notebook devoted just to this process. And every day you're going to write the date on the process. And the top is going to say reasons why I love him. And you're going to come up with 10. Now, I will tell you from my own experience that at first you might write things like, well, he's the father of my kids. He came home from work today. He makes money for the family. He picked his underwear up off the floor. Like, they may be the simplest things ever, but you will find if you force yourself, and I say force here, force yourself to come up with 10 things every day, that you are going to start to notice the things that he does that are amazing and wonderful and reasons why you love him. Maybe you might notice that he came up and gave you a little bit of a shoulder rub when he could tell that you were feeling tense, that maybe he picked up the living room before you came home, or that maybe he offered to take you out to dinner for a date night on Friday night. You are going to start noticing that there are so many amazing things that you love about him, and that all of those words that you were using earlier, that you always fight, that he never does this, that he always does that, are going to kind of fall back in the back burner, that you're going to spend more time focusing on the amazing things that you love about him than on all of those things that you hate about him. And I know right now you're thinking, yeah, no way I can come up with 10 things. Get creative, really think about it. And quite honestly, if you're not able to come up with 10 things, then look back in history. What did you love about him when you first married him, when you first met him, when you had your first child? What were those things? And start focusing on all of those reasons why you love him instead of on focusing on all of the stories that you've created about how things don't work or why they don't work or all the fighting and all of the negative things that go on. So they say this in my circle all the time. I'll share this little quick thing with you. But as soon as you decide you're going to buy a car and you are looking for a Chevy, let's say you're looking for a Chevy Suburban, is what you're thinking of buying, you are going to start noticing that you see Chevy Suburbans everywhere you go. And it's not because there's suddenly more Chevy Suburbans all over the place. It's because your brain is focusing on Chevy Suburbans because that's what you're thinking of buying. Same thing is true here. If you start focusing on the reasons that you love your husband and all the wonderful things he does, then you are going to see more of those things and you are going to start feeling the feeling of love and joy and happiness instead of the current feeling of agitation, frustration, annoyance. You know what I'm talking about. You're having those feelings right now. So let's just repeat all of those quick little steps again. The first step is just to simply notice. Notice the language that you're using when you are having feelings of not loving him. The second thing is to ask yourself, are these true? And most of the time, when you use the words always, never, it's not true. You don't always or never anything. So notice that those words, those statements, those sentences, those thoughts are not true. Your brain wants you to believe that they're true because it's a lot easier to generalize than it is to pick things apart and decide if they're true or not, but they are not true. And then the third thing is to every day make that list of 10 things that you love about him. And if you're like me and you're a bit resistant to writing, you can just lay in bed at night and list out 10 things in your head. Helps you to fall asleep with those feelings of love and joy. But I do recommend the writing when you're first starting out because it's so cool to go back and see the history of all of the things. How at the beginning, maybe you had to really think really, really hard and come up with some little tiny weird reasons that you loved him, where suddenly, after a few days, weeks, months, it becomes really easy to think about all the reasons that you love him. And over time, you'll notice that the feeling of love starts to come back. All right. So those are my 3 steps. Thank you so, so much for listening to this podcast. This was a quick one. Um, please, 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 if you want more tips, head on over to TikTok and find me. I am at Coach for Moms. You can also head over to the show notes for this episode, racheljenks.com/episode 53. And you can click on the link there and you can grab a call with me to help you implement these to work together in a coaching relationship, or you can always grab the free Makeover Your Marriage plan that will get you started on this journey of fixing your marriage so that you can avoid divorce. So, thank you so much again for listening, and we will chat with you, I should say, in the next episode. Bye bye.